The marriage certificate burned like frost against Diana Scott's shaking hands as the Mercedes glided to a stop before the looming mansion, where she was to wed a dying billionaire she'd never laid eyes on. Unbeknownst to Henry Richards' family, the woman they'd purchased was no ordinary healer. She wielded centuries-old ancestral power, capable of mending what modern medicine could only dream of touching. The instant her skin grazed his, a torrent of visions surged through her mind, threatening to unravel everything. The curse was stark and merciless. Every Richard heir perished before 41, consumed by the vengeful wrath of an enslaved woman their ancestors had betrayed long ago. 11 healers had dared to challenge it. 11 had fallen. Diana, the 12th, stepped into the shadows of their fate. The twist that would destroy everything. The vengeful spirit they were trying to appease was her own great-great-grandmother, and she didn't want the curse broken. She wanted it completed. Almost there, Miss Scott. The driver's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Through the partition, she could see his eyes watching her in the rearview mirror, cold, calculating, like everyone else in the Richard family's employ. Diana's fingers found the small red flannel bag at her throat, filled with herbs her great-grandmother had blessed before crossing over. "Baby girl," the old woman had whispered on her deathbed, "your gift runs deeper than healing bodies. You got the power to heal souls, but that kind of magic comes with a price that'll test your very spirit." The mansion that emerged through the Georgia pines looked more like a fortress than a home. Gothic spires reached toward storm clouds gathering overhead, and every window seemed to stare down at her like accusing eyes. Somewhere inside those walls lay Henry Richard III, heir to a tech empire worth billions, 33 years old, and according to every specialist from Emory to Johns Hopkins, dying from a mysterious illness that defied medical explanation. But Diana knew better than the doctors. The moment she'd seen his photograph, she'd felt it, dark tendrils of something unnatural wrapped around his life force like kudzu choking an oak tree. This wasn't just sickness, it was something far older, something that whispered of conjure work gone wrong and blood debts unpaid. The car stopped. Through the windshield, Diana could see a figure watching from an upstairs window, tall, pale, with eyes that seemed to burn even from this distance. Her healing gift stirred restlessly beneath her skin, recognizing a soul in torment. What Henry Richards' family didn't know was that they hadn't just bought themselves a desperate young woman willing to marry for money. They'd summoned a conjure woman whose bloodline carried power that could reshape reality itself. The Richard mansion's foyer felt like stepping into a mausoleum, all marble and shadows with portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow Diana's every movement. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft whisper of her sneakers against polished stone. Everything about this place screamed old money and older secrets. "Miss Scott." A voice belonged to a woman who materialized from the shadows like smoke given form. Ella Richard, Henry's mother, stood ramrod straight in a designer suit that probably cost more than Diana's annual rent. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe chignon, and her blue eyes held the kind of coldness that came from generations of looking down on people like Diana. "Mrs. Richard." Diana kept her voice steady, though her great-grandmother's protective charms seemed to vibrate against her skin in warning. "Let's be clear about why you're here." Ella's voice could have frozen Georgia peach tea. "My son is dying. The doctors have given up. You come highly recommended for your unconventional methods." The way she said it made it sound dirty, something to be ashamed of. "My healing practices are rooted in traditions older than this house," Diana replied, letting steel creep into her voice. She'd dealt with white folks who thought her great-grandmother's medicine was nothing but superstition before. Ella's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Traditions? How quaint. What matters is results. Heal my son, and your family's debt disappears. Your younger brother gets the kidney transplant he needs." Fail. She didn't finish the threat, but it hung in the air like Spanish moss. Footsteps echoed from the grand staircase. A man descended, not Henry, but someone who looked like a younger version of the family portraits. Tall, lean, with the kind of privileged beauty that came from good breeding and better nutrition. "Mother, you're being your charming self, I see." His voice carried honeyed southern politeness that didn't quite hide the mocking edge underneath. "I'm Patrick, Henry's brother. The healthy heir, as Mother likes to call me." Something flickered in Patrick's green eyes as he looked at Diana. Interest, calculation, and something else she couldn't quite name. You must be our miracle worker. Tell me, Miss Scott, what makes you think you can succeed where Harvard Medical School failed? The question was a test, she realized. Both Richards were watching her with predatory intensity, waiting to see if she'd crumble under their scrutiny. Because, Diana said quietly, her great-grandmother's power stirring in her bones, I don't just treat symptoms. I heal what's really broken. Above them, a door slammed with enough force to shake the crystal chandelier. The third floor of the Richard mansion felt different, charged with an energy that made Diana's skin crawl and her healing gift recoil like a snake from fire. Each step down the hallway brought waves of wrongness that seemed to seep from the very walls. Whatever was killing Henry Richard, it wasn't natural. Ella stopped outside heavy oak doors carved with symbols that made Diana's blood run cold. They weren't decorative, they were protective wards, the kind her great-grandmother had warned her about. Someone had tried to contain something powerful behind these doors. He's difficult, Ella said, her mask of ice-cold control slipping for just a moment. The illness has made him unpredictable. Violent sometimes. But as the doors swung open, Diana saw immediately that Ella was lying. Henry Richard wasn't violent. He was dying, yes, but more than that, he was fighting something with every breath in his body. And he was losing. He stood by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate, his back to them. Even from behind, Diana could see the tremor in his hands, the way he held himself like a man barely keeping his head above drowning waters. When he turned, her breath caught. Henry Richard was beautiful in the way that broken things sometimes were, all sharp angles and haunted eyes with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it for days. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. They burned with an intensity that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate prayers. Underneath was something that made her heart skip, recognition, pure, impossible recognition, like they'd known each other across lifetimes. So you're the conjure woman they've bought me, he said, his voice rough as sandpaper, come to perform miracles for the cursed rich boy. The words hit Diana like ice water. Cursed, Henry's laugh was bitter as burnt coffee. Oh, they didn't tell you? How typically Richard. He moved toward her with predatory grace, and she caught the scent of something wild and dangerous clinging to him, not cologne, but something that reminded her of storm-struck earth and midnight rituals. Tell me what? Diana demanded, even as her healing gift sparked in response to his proximity. That I'm not just sick, sweetheart. I'm bound. He was close enough now that she could see the fine tremor in his hands, feel the heat radiating from his fevered skin. Bound by blood and betrayal to something that's been feeding on my family for 3 generations. Ella made a sharp sound of denial, but Henry never took his eyes off Diana. Tell me, conjure woman, have you ever tried to heal someone who was claimed by something that doesn't want to let go? Before Diana could answer, the temperature in the room plummeted. The windows began to frost over despite the Georgia heat, and shadows gathered in corners where no shadows should be. Henry's eyes rolled back, his body convulsing as something invisible wrapped around his throat. But the most terrifying part was the voice that whispered through the room, ancient, female, and filled with a hatred so pure it made Diana's bones ache. No healing for the Richard heir. The debt will be paid in blood as promised. The supernatural attack left Henry unconscious for 4 hours, his body burning with fever that no ice could touch. Diana sat beside his bed, her hands glowing with soft conjure light as she fought to stabilize his life force against whatever was trying to claim it. Ella had fled the moment the temperature dropped, but Patrick lingered in the doorway, watching Diana work with unsettling intensity. You're stronger than the others, he said finally, his voice carrying an odd note of approval. Others. Diana's hands never stopped moving, weaving protective barriers around Henry's fevered form. The healers Mother brought before you, for women over the past 3 years. They all tried to break whatever's got its claws in Henry. Patrick's smile was sharp as winter. They all failed spectacularly. A chill ran down Diana's spine. What happened to them? Madness. Comas. One simply disappeared. He stepped closer, and Diana caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something that reminded her of graveyard dirt. "But you're different. I can feel it." Before she could respond, Henry's eyes snapped open, burning with unnatural light. "Diana," her name on his lips sent electricity shooting through her veins. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Neither should you be dying from something that feeds on your family's guilt," she shot back, her hands finding his. The moment their skin touched, visions crashed through her mind. Centuries of Richard wealth built on the suffering of enslaved people, a young enslaved woman named Ruth who possessed powerful conjure abilities, and a betrayal so profound it had torn reality itself. Henry gasped, seeing the same visions through their connection. "You felt it too," Diana whispered, the truth hitting her like lightning. "Ruth Scott. She was my ancestor and your family." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. "Your great-great-grandfather promised her freedom in exchange for her healing work, then sold her deeper south when she became too powerful. She cursed the Richard line with her dying breath." Henry confirmed, his grip on her hands tightening. "Every generation, the eldest son dies before 41. My father lasted until 39. My grandfather, 34. Patrick's laughter echoed from the doorway. "Such touching family history. Tell her the rest, brother." Henry's face went ashen. "There is no rest." "Oh, but there is." Patrick's voice carried a sing-song quality that made Diana's blood freeze. "Tell her about the ritual, Henry. Tell her how the curse can be broken." "Patrick, don't," Henry pleaded. "The last Richard heir must willingly give his life to a Scott descendant," Patrick continued, his eyes glittering with malicious glee. "Blood for blood. A life for a life. The curse ends when Ruth's bloodline claims what was owed." The room fell silent except for Henry's labored breathing. Diana's healing gift recoiled in horror as she understood the trap she'd walked into. They hadn't brought her here to save Henry. They brought her here to kill him. "That's why Mother was so desperate to find you," Patrick added conversationally. "Not to heal the curse, but to complete it. Ruth's own descendant ending the Richard line forever." Henry's eyes found hers, burning with desperate love and terrible resignation. "I'm sorry, Diana. I tried to warn you away, but you're so beautiful, so powerful. I couldn't help falling in love with the woman who's supposed to be my executioner." That night, as storm clouds gathered over Atlanta on June 12, 2024, Diana discovered she wasn't the first Scott to enter this house. In the mansion's library, hidden behind a false panel Patrick had shown her with theatrical smugness, she found a collection that made her blood freeze. Journals, letters, and personal effects from her ancestors who had tried and failed to break the curse over the decades. Her hands trembled as she opened the most recent journal, dated June 3, 2022. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, and heartbreakingly familiar. "My name is Gloria Scott, and I am the granddaughter of Daniel Scott, who was the son of Ruth Scott. I have come to end what my great-grandmother began. But I fear I have discovered something terrible." Diana's breath caught. Gloria Scott, her own cousin, who had disappeared during a research trip to Atlanta. The family had assumed she'd started a new life somewhere else. They'd never known she'd come here. "The curse is not what we believed," Gloria's journal continued. "Ruth did not simply curse the Richard line to die. She bound their souls to hers across generations, feeding on their life force to sustain her spirit in the between worlds. She has been growing stronger with each death. And I fear she no longer wants the curse to end. She wants Henry's death to complete a ritual that will give her physical form again with the power to exact revenge on the entire South." The journal entries grew increasingly frantic, describing supernatural attacks, whispered threats, and most chilling of all, Gloria's growing realization that she was falling in love with Henry's older brother, who had died mysteriously just days before she vanished. Fascinating reading. Diana spun to find Henry standing in the doorway, his fever-bright eyes reflecting the lightning outside. But something was different about him. His movements too fluid, his smile too knowing. "You're not Henry," she whispered, her great-grandmother's protective charms burning against her skin. "Clever girl." The thing wearing Henry's face circled her like a predator. "Though I am wearing him rather well, don't you think? Your ancestors always did prefer tall, dark, and devoted. Ruth, the name tasted like copper and graveyard dirt. In the flesh. Well, in his flesh, Ruth's laugh echoed from Henry's throat, wrong and musical. Do you know how long I've been waiting for you, child? The strongest Scot bloodline in 4 generations, walking right into my parlor. Diana backed toward the window, her mind racing. You've been manipulating everything. The debt, my brother's illness, bringing me here. The debt is real, sweetness, as is your brother's need for that kidney. Ruth's stolen smile was radiant and terrible. But yes, I may have influenced certain medical opinions to ensure the bills piled up properly. I needed you desperate enough to come willingly. The ritual requires consent. What ritual? Diana demanded. The one that will give me permanent form in the living world. Henry's willing death at the hands of my descendant will complete the binding I began 2 centuries ago. I'll have a body that can't be destroyed, power that can reshape reality, and all the time in the world to make the South burn for what it did to my people. Outside, thunder crashed. In that moment of sound and fury, Diana saw the truth hidden behind Ruth's grand plans. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was about a woman so consumed by rage that she'd become the very monster she'd sought to destroy. Most terrifying of all, somewhere deep in Henry's possessed eyes, she could see the real him, trapped and screaming, watching helplessly as his body was used to threaten the woman he loved. Don't worry, child, Ruth purred. I'll make his death quick. It's yours that will take time. Ruth's laughter filled the library as supernatural wind howled through the mansion, rattling windows and extinguishing lights. Diana pressed herself against the cold glass, her healing gift sparking erratically as ancient rage pressed against her mind like a physical weight. You feel it, don't you? Ruth asked, Henry's stolen voice dropping to a seductive whisper. The power singing in your veins. The same power that flows through me. We could rule together, child. Make them all pay for what they took from us. Understand now, Gloria's journal had warned. The curse can't be broken by death. It can only be transformed by love stronger than hate. But I'm not strong enough. I pray whoever comes after me will be. Through the supernatural storm, Diana heard something that made her heart break, Henry's voice, faint but determined, fighting through Ruth's possession. Don't let her win. You're stronger than she knows. But as Ruth's power wrapped around her throat, cutting off her air, Diana realized that strength might not be enough. Her brother was dying. Henry was trapped. And somewhere in this mansion, Patrick was probably preparing to collect whatever was left of her body for disposal. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the journal page, Gloria's words blurring as consciousness faded, love stronger than hate. If only she knew how to find it before it was too late. Diana woke to the sound of someone calling her name, not Ruth's mocking tone, but a voice raw with desperation and love. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself on the library floor, dawn light filtering through storm-cleansed windows on June 13, 2024. Above her, Henry knelt with tears streaming down his face, his hands glowing with an impossible silver light. Thank God, he whispered, his voice entirely his own. I thought I'd lost you, Henry. Diana struggled to sit up, her throat aching from Ruth's supernatural strangling. How are you? She was possessing you. She still is. His smile was heartbreaking. But you did something last night, Diana. When she was trying to kill you, your power, it connected with mine. For just a moment, I could feel what you feel, see what you see. And I remembered something. He helped her to her feet, his touch sending warmth through her battered body. Gloria didn't fail, Diana. She found the answer. He guided her to the journal, pointing to a passage Diana had missed in her panic. Ruth's rage has made her powerful, but it's also made her vulnerable. She's forgotten the most important rule of conjure work. Whatever energy you put into the world comes back threefold. 2 centuries of hatred and revenge have created a debt in the spiritual realm that must be paid. I don't understand, Diana said, though something deep in her great-grandmother's teachings was stirring to life. Love magic, Henry explained, his eyes bright with desperate hope. Gloria discovered that Ruth bound herself to hatred so completely that genuine love, freely given between a Richard and a Scott, would create a spiritual contradiction she couldn't survive. Diana's heart stopped. "You're saying, I'm saying I love you, Diana Scott. Not because of some ritual or curse or family obligation, but because you walked into hell to save a stranger and showed me what it means to be human again." His hands cupped her face gently. "And if you love me too, really love me, not just feel sorry for me, then we can end this." Before Diana could respond, the temperature plummeted. Ruth's laughter echoed through the mansion as her rage-fueled power pressed against them like a physical wall. "Foolish children," her voice boomed from everywhere and nowhere. "You think love conquers all? I am hatred given form. I am justice denied. I am—" "You're afraid," Diana interrupted, understanding flooding through her like sunlight. She rose to her feet, her own power answering Henry's call. "You're terrified because you felt what's growing between us. And you know it's everything you threw away when you chose revenge over healing." Ruth's shriek shook the house, but Diana pressed on, her voice growing stronger. "You could have used your power to build something beautiful. Instead, you became exactly what they said we were: dangerous, vengeful, destructive." "But we're not," Henry added, his silver light intertwining with her golden glow. "We choose love. We choose forgiveness. We choose to break the cycle." Together, their combined power began to push back against 2 centuries of accumulated hatred, love proving itself the stronger magic. The mansion erupted into supernatural chaos as love and hatred collided with the force of 2 centuries' worth of accumulated power. Ruth's rage manifested as shadow creatures that tore through the walls, while Diana and Henry's combined light pushed back with healing warmth that made the very air shimmer with possibility. "You cannot destroy me," Ruth's voice thundered from every shadow. "I am woven into the very foundation of this place. I am—" "You're trapped," Diana interrupted, her great-grandmother's knowledge flowing through her like a river finding its course. "Just like you trapped the Richard souls. But every binding spell has a weakness. And yours is standing right in front of you." Ruth materialized in the center of the library, no longer wearing Henry's face but appearing as she truly was, a woman consumed by so much rage that her very essence had become twisted into something barely human. Her eyes burned with the fury of the wrong dead. But underneath, Diana could see something else: fear. "2 bloodlines freely choosing each other," Henry said, his hand finding Diana's as their powers spiraled higher. "Scott and Richard, united not by force or obligation, but by love. Your binding spell becomes our freedom." Ruth lunged toward them, her form shifting between woman and shadow, but their combined light was too strong. Where she touched it, she screamed as if burned. "I can see her pain," Diana whispered to Henry, tears streaming down her face. "All of it. The betrayal, the hopelessness, the way they stole everything from her. She's not evil. She's just broken." In that moment of compassion, Diana made a choice that changed everything. Instead of fighting Ruth's rage, she opened her heart to it, letting herself feel the full weight of her ancestors' suffering while simultaneously pouring love into the wounds that had festered for 2 centuries. "Ruth," she called out, her voice carrying both power and tenderness. "You've been alone with this pain for so long, but you don't have to carry it anymore. Let us help you heal." The attacking shadows stopped mid-strike. Ruth's form solidified, her face a mask of confusion and desperate hope. "Heal, child? I am beyond healing. I am nothing but rage and retribution." "Your family," Diana said simply. Henry's power flowed through their connection, adding his strength to hers as they reached out to Ruth, not with judgment, but with the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. For the first time in 2 centuries, Ruth felt genuine compassion directed toward her pain rather than fear of her power. The change was instantaneous and magnificent. Centuries of accumulated darkness began to unravel as healing light poured into wounds that had been left to poison everything around them. Ruth's scream transformed from rage to relief as the burden she'd carried for so long was finally, truly shared. "I remember," she whispered, her form growing more solid and peaceful with each passing moment. "I remember who I was before the anger. I was a healer like you." The mansion shuddered one final time, then went utterly still. When the light faded, Ruth stood before them, transformed, no longer a creature of vengeance but a woman finally at peace. "The curse is broken," she said wonderingly. "Not by death or revenge, but by choosing love over hatred. By remembering that healing is always stronger than hurting." 4 months later, on October 17, 2024, Diana stood in the garden of the Scott Richard Healing Center, watching children from Southwest Atlanta laugh and play in spaces where shadows and rage had once ruled. The Gothic mansion had been transformed into something beautiful, a place where ancient wisdom met modern medicine, where her great-grandmother's conjure work stood proudly alongside cutting-edge medical research. The kidney transplant was a complete success, Henry said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. His health had returned completely the moment Ruth's curse broke. But more than that, he radiated the kind of peace that came from a soul finally free to love without fear. "Daniel is already asking when he can start his internship here." Diana leaned back against his chest, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "He wants to study bioengineering. Says he's going to find ways to combine traditional healing with technology." "Smart kid," takes after his sister. Henry's lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear that never failed to make her shiver. "Speaking of taking after people," Ella called. "She wants to fund 4 more healing centers across the South." The transformation in Henry's mother had been almost as dramatic as Ruth's healing. Freed from generations of guilt and supernatural influence, Ella had thrown herself into making amends with the passion of someone determined to rewrite her family's legacy. "And Patrick?" Diana asked, though she already knew the answer from Henry's smile. "Still in therapy, but he's getting better. Turns out having a vengeful spirit whispering in your ear for 29 years does terrible things to your personality." Henry turned her in his arms, his green eyes bright with love and laughter. "He asked if we'd consider letting him help with the new center in Savannah. Apparently, he wants to learn about ethical wealth management." Through the French doors, Diana could see Ruth working with a group of young healers, teaching them the traditional root work that had been nearly lost to time. Her ancestor had chosen to remain in the physical world, dedicating herself to nurturing the next generation of healing women. The rage that had consumed her for 2 centuries had transformed into fierce protectiveness for those carrying on the tradition. "Are you ready?" Henry asked, nodding toward the small group gathered on the mansion's front steps. Their wedding party was an eclectic mix, Daniel in his best suit despite still recovering from surgery, Ella dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, Patrick looking genuinely happy for the first time in years, and Ruth beaming with pride as she prepared to officiate a ceremony that would bind 2 bloodlines in love instead of hatred. "Mrs. Richard," Henry murmured against her ear. "Ready to make it official?" "I've been ready since the moment you chose love over fear," Diana whispered back, rising on her toes to kiss him softly as they walked toward their future together. The healing center buzzed with life and possibility behind them. Children played where spirits had once wailed. Laughter echoed through halls that had known only sorrow. In the heart of it all, 2 people who had been brought together by ancient pain had chosen to create something beautiful instead. The Scott Richard legacy would be written in healing, not hatred, in love, not loss, in the magic that happened when broken people chose to mend each other instead of staying forever wounded.